You feel so bad because the narcissist has to feel so good. So I want to start by talking about the fairy tale Cinderella, because you might think of it as a story of how a woman survived and recovered from narcissistic abuse. Because here you had a very kind and beautiful woman who's being scapegoated and treated like the scourge of the earth by her narcissistic stepmother and stepsisters. You know, she's forced to clean up after them and deserving of nothing good in return. It's clear that the narcissistic stepmother gets to feel good about herself by being able to put Cinderella down at every turn. And what I think is so powerful in the film is when Cinderella and her stepmother's reality is upended, when Cinderella's shoe fits the glass slipper and she's transported into the world of royalty and galas and etc. And so, in so doing, she shows how fictional the claim that she was so bad and undeserving actually is. And of course, at that same time, her stepmother is crushed that Cinderella will no longer go along with the way she was treated in their home. That once exposed, the stepmother's lie can no longer be believed in the same way. I often say on this channel that survivors of narcissistic abuse are not nearly as bad as they've been led to believe. But, I think there's an understandable kind of response at times to that, where the sort of question arises of, okay, well, yeah, that sounds, well and good, but what if I'm in fact not that great? I mean, I feel pretty bad a lot of the time, and I can name lots of instances that support how I've been bad in my eyes. So what if you're, to me, what if you're wrong and my parent and myself are right about me? And I think that's where the metaphor of Cinderella really applies, that when one person is cast as the one to blame for any and everything in a relationship, then I would submit to you a lie is happening. The truth is a lot more likely to be that blame was misplaced than that the person was deserving of the blame. And I think that's what's so satisfying about the tale of Cinderella. It's that lie that she's so bad is exposed and resolved or proven untrue. That, Cinderella was in fact a very good and deserving person and was then treated as such when she escaped the confines of her home. And the same might be said for when survivors are told that they are not nearly as bad as they've been led to believe. That what this can mean is that there's in fact a middle ground that we all reside in as humans, where we're not perfect, but still deserving of love and self-respect. And in the course of narcissistic abuse, that middle ground gets exchanged for this artificial arrangement where one person is perfect, the narcissistic abuser, and the other is supposedly inherently inferior, who's typically the scapegoat survivor. And I hope that today's video is going to offer a tool for busting this myth that so often happens in narcissistic abuse. Whenever one person, typically the narcissist in this case, requires that they feel artificially better about who they are, I think there needs to be someone else to then feel artificially worse about who they are. It's going to be the scapegoated child or partner. And as this truth gets absorbed during recovery, a lot of the rooms within oneself that maybe had to be closed off can grow to feel safer to re-enter. Well, my name is Jay Reed, and I'm a licensed psychotherapist in San Francisco, California, and I specialize in helping individuals recover from narcissistic abuse, both in individual therapy and through my online course and accompanying private Facebook community. And across these platforms, we take a three-pronged approach to recovery that involves making sense of what happened to know you didn't deserve it, gaining, whether it's psychological, emotional, or physical, distance from the narcissistic abuser, and living in defiance of the narcissist's rules for living. Today's video falls under the category of making sense of what happened. Another resource for making sense of what happened is my free ebook that's called Surviving Narcissistic Abuse as the Scapegoat, because it goes into other important aspects of what it's like to survive this form of narcissistic abuse. Whether it's self-limiting beliefs about yourself that had to be adopted, or why the narcissistic personality from a psychological perspective is so geared to put those closest to them down. And I think in addition to this video and the other videos on this playlist, that the ebook can help you realize how none of this abuse was actually your fault, but the product of the narcissist's psychological and emotional problems. Well, you can find the link to the ebook in the description below or by clicking here. And just to mention, if you visit the site and you don't see the box to submit your email address, just give it a few seconds because sometimes there's a lag before it shows up. And if you haven't already, I encourage you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications so that you're alerted when I post new videos on these kinds of topics. So why do you have to feel so bad in order for the narcissist to feel so good? Well, whenever one person can't tolerate their own human imperfections and has to offload those hated imperfections onto someone else, then an act of untruth or distortion of reality has to happen. And this is exactly what happens in the course of narcissistic abuse. The narcissist is unable to tolerate their own imperfections and has power over the scapegoat child or partner to make them suffer instead. And doing so conveniently protects the narcissist from their own feelings of worthlessness. Scapegoat survivors are very familiar with this kind of treatment. But the entire premise of having to seem perfect to oneself and others constitutes a lie that the narcissist must live and then coerce the scapegoat to live along with them. And in so doing, the narcissist gets to feel artificially good while the scapegoat has to feel artificially bad most or all the time. So how does this apply to the claim that scapegoat survivors are not nearly as bad as they've been led to believe? Well, if you found yourself having to believe you were defective or undeserving in order to share a reality with that parent or partner, then you likely suffered narcissistic abuse. And what that means is that these painful beliefs about yourself were and are artificial. That they're a product of the fiction that someone with narcissistic personality disorder must live their lives with. And if you were under their authority or power at one point, then you likely had no choice but to participate in that fiction. And this is why in therapy sessions, when clients talk of how they were wrong or injurious to someone else, I always listen with an ear towards how they may be overly blaming of themselves as a residue of having to insist that they are worse than most other people. And usually as therapy proceeds, a shift tends to happen where relationships are not seen as games of having to manage the other person's very fragile self-esteem, but as ways for two sort of perfectly imperfect people to come together and sort of see what can happen. And the latter was never an option with a narcissistic abuser because they were always so fixated on needing to prop up and keep themselves propped up all the time. I think it's also why survivors of narcissistic abuse typically can exclaim, there was never any room for me in that relationship. Despite, perhaps being accused of being the selfish or arrogant one in the relationship by the narcissistic abuser. And as survivors grow to see just how much of a fiction that was plied against them, they're often able to exclaim, there was never any room for me in that relationship to this person. And that may be despite the narcissistic abuser saying that the survivor was the selfish or arrogant one, when enough distance is achieved, the survivor gets to see, wow, I really couldn't be there in the relationship. It was so much all about the narcissistic abuser. Well, I hope today's video can be an important touchstone to help in the process of recovery from narcissistic abuse, particularly when feelings of being bad creep up. If you experience feelings or thoughts that seem to claim you're a bad person, you might try to remember that these claims are a product of the fiction that your narcissistic parent or partner forced you to live in. And you might gently offer yourself the truth that you're not perfect, but no less so than anyone else, and you're still an intact person deserving of love and respect exactly as you are right now. And of course, it can be really helpful to find relationships that echo this sentiment to you because that can powerfully reinforce this message. And I want to make plain that I'm under no illusion that, kind of saying this to oneself can kind of immediately change the feelings or even radically change one's perception. So as always with these tactics, I would encourage a lot of patience and gentleness with yourself as you kind of, practice reminding yourself that these sort of negative ways of seeing and thinking and feeling about yourself were never sort of based in fact. Today's video by design was a short one, but I hope it was helpful in combating that fiction that you are the bad one. And I want to thank you again all for watching and for your continued engagement with the channel. And I look forward to posting again next Sunday. Take care.